The moment the giant learned to respect the little dragon. The gym was humid, the air thick with the smell of sweat and leather from punching bags. Bruce Lee was adjusting a student's gloves when the door opened with a bang. An imposing figure filled the doorway, a 7-foot man, shoulders as broad as a closet, muscles defined beneath a tight t-shirt. It was Marcus Titan Dawson, an up-and-coming MMA fighter known as much for his brute strength as his inflated ego. "Are you that Bruce Lee?" Titan's voice resounded, deep and full of disdain. "I heard you trained some guys here." Bruce didn't look up right away. He finished tying the student's gloves, patted him on the shoulder and only then turned around, facing the giant with a calm that seemed to challenge him. "It is me. How can I help?" Titan crossed his arms, biceps swelling beneath his skin. "I want to see what's special about this Jeet Kune Do of yours. They say you're fast, but..." He let his gaze run Bruce from top to bottom, as if evaluating an insect. "You're tiny. It shouldn't even weigh 70 kilos. The surrounding students stopped what they were doing. Some exchanged nervous glances. Bruce, however, just smiled, as if the provocation was a gift. "Size isn't everything," he said, his voice calm. "But if you want a demonstration, that's fine." Titan laughed, a hoarse, arrogant sound. "Demonstration? Man, I could break you in half with one hand." Bruce didn't respond. Instead, he walked to the center of the mat, his steps light, almost dancing. Titan followed, his fists clenched, ready for what he imagined would be an easy victory. "Let's go, then," Bruce said, assuming a relaxed posture, his arms hanging loosely at his sides. "Show me what you have." Titan wasted no time. With a roar, he charged forward, his right arm outstretched in a direct punch, powerful enough to fell a bull. Bruce, however, was no longer there. His body moved like quicksilver, swerving to the side with a fluidity that seemed to defy physics. Titan's fist passed inches from his face, but before the giant could recover, Bruce spun, and his right foot connected with the back of Titan's knee with a dry crack. The impact was so quick that no one saw it properly. In an instant, Titan was standing tall and confident. The next, his knee gave way, and he fell back onto the mat, the air escaping his lungs with a surprised grunt. The entire gym held its breath. Bruce stood still, watching the giant writhe on the ground, an expression of disbelief on his face. 2 seconds, Bruce muttered, almost to himself. "That's how long it took for you to discover that size is not speed." Titan tried to get up, but the pain in his knee made him give up. He looked at Bruce, no longer with disdain, but with something new, respect. How did you do that?" Bruce reached out his hand, helping him sit up. "It wasn't force. It was precision. And you just learned that in combat, the smallest can be the most dangerous." The giant lowered his head, rubbing his knee. I underestimated you." Bruce smiled, this time without irony. "Most do. Until they learn their lesson." And so, in that stuffy gym, a giant learned that true power lies not in size, but in the ability to see beyond the obvious. And Bruce Lee, once again, proved that his legend was not made of words, but of actions, swift, relentless, and unforgettable. The weight of humility. Titan stood up slowly, leaning against the gym wall. His knee throbbed, but the physical pain was insignificant compared to what burned in his chest: shame. He had always been the strongest, the most feared, the one who crushed opponents with a single blow. Now here he was, defeated by a man barely taller than his shoulders. Titan hesitated, searching for words. "I never thought someone could take me down like that." Bruce crossed his arms, watching him calmly. "You weren't knocked down by a smaller man. He was brought down by his own arrogance." Titan clenched his fists, but there was no anger in them, only frustration. He looked around the gym, where other fighters were training, oblivious to what had just happened. No one there knew that the invincible Titan had been defeated. And for the first time, he wondered if it mattered. "What do I do now?" he asked, more to himself than to Bruce. You train, Bruce replied, without hesitation. Not to be stronger, but to be smarter. Brute force is like a hammer, useful but limited. You need to learn to be a scalpel. Titan took a deep breath. The idea of starting over, of admitting that I didn't know everything, was like swallowing glass. But something about Bruce, maybe his quiet confidence, maybe the way his eyes didn't waver, made him believe it was worth trying. Okay, he murmured. Teach me. Bruce nodded but didn't smile. There was no triumph in his expression, only seriousness. First, you will learn to fall. Then you will learn to stand up better. The first step. The following days were a constant humiliation for Titan. Bruce made him repeat basic movements, breaking down his rigid posture, forcing him to move with fluidity rather than force. At first, Titan resisted, growling, cursing, trying to impose his way of fighting. But Bruce was relentless. You're not fighting me, he said, dodging a clumsy punch. You're fighting against your own limits. And then, one sultry afternoon, something changed. Titan was exhausted, sweating, his muscles burning. Bruce attacked him with a quick sequence of blows, and, by instinct, Titan raised his arms to block. But instead of resisting, he gave in. He let the momentum of the blow guide his movement, turning his body and counterattacking with a kick that, for the first time, wasn't just power, it was precision. Bruce stopped, surprised. Titan too. I did it, he murmured in disbelief. Bruce smiled, a genuine smile, without irony. You started it. The proof. Months passed. Titan was no longer the same. His body was still immense, but now he moved with a grace he hadn't had before. He was still strong, but he had learned to use that strength differently, not to crush, but to control. And then came the challenge. A famous fighter, known for his brutality, arrived in the city boasting that he would defeat Bruce Lee. When he found out that Titan trained with him, he laughed. This giant is just muscle, he said, in a crowded bar. I'll break him like a twig. Titan heard the words but didn't react. He looked at Bruce, who was at his side, calm as ever. Do you want to fight? Bruce asked. Titan shook his head. No. I need to fight. The fight. The ring was set up in the center of an abandoned warehouse. Dim lights illuminated the concrete floor, and a small crowd gathered eager for the spectacle. Titan's opponent, a short but compact man with scars on his face, entered first, showing off to the audience. Titan rose later, without fanfare. He didn't scream, he didn't make threats. He just stood there, waiting. The gong sounded. The opponent rushed forward with a savage punch, hoping to hit Titan's chin. But Titan was no longer there. He moved to the side, letting the blow pass, and responded with a roundhouse kick that hit his opponent's ribs with a sharp crack. The man staggered, but did not fall. He recovered and went up again, this time trying to grab Titan. But Titan had already learned, he no longer fought against the force, but with it. As his opponent pulled him close, Titan spun, using the man's own momentum to launch him into the ropes. The crowd screamed. The opponent stood up, furious, his face red with rage. He attacked again, and again, and again, but every blow was deflected, every thrust was used against him. Titan was no longer trying to win. He was dancing. In the third round, the opponent was exhausted, his arms were heavy, his movements were slow. Titan saw the opening. A quick kick to the leg, a hook to the chin, and the man dropped like a stone. Silence. So, applause. Titan helped his opponent to his feet, offering his hand. The humiliated man refused, but Titan didn't care. He looked at Bruce, who was standing outside the ring, and saw something new in his eyes, pride. The legacy. Years later, Titan was known for something other than his strength. He was still a giant, but now he was also a master. His dojo was sought after by fighters who wanted to learn not just how to hit, but how to think. And, one quiet afternoon, when an arrogant young man walked into his gym, challenging him with empty words, Titan smiled. "Size is not speed," he said, before knocking the boy down with a single blow. And so, the lesson was repeated. The weight of wisdom. The young man, named Kale, stood up slowly, his eyes burning with anger. He was fast, yes, but Titan hadn't used strength, just precision. A clean punch to the solar plexus, a calculated imbalance. The blow hadn't hurt as much as it had humiliated. "That was luck," Kale spat, wiping the blood from his lip. Titan crossed his arms, watching the boy. It wasn't the first time someone had entered his dojo with arrogance, nor would it be the last. But there was something different about Kale, a fury that didn't just come from wounded pride, but from something deeper. "Do you want to learn?" Titan asked, his voice calm. "I want to break you," Kale replied, moving forward again. This time, Titan didn't move. He let the punch pass inches from his face, grabbed the boy's wrist and twisted it with a smooth movement, forcing him to kneel. "Anger is a weapon," said Titan. "But you don't know how to use it." Kale growled, trying to break free, but Titan held him still. "You fight as if you were alone. As if no one else mattered. And who cares?" Kale spat. "I just need to be stronger than you." Titan released him and took a step back. "Then you will never be strong enough." The awakening. Days passed, and Kale returned. Not to challenge, but to observe. Titan allowed it. He saw in the boy's eyes the same shadow he had already carried, the need to prove something, to fill a void with victories. A month later, Kale asked to train. Titan didn't smile. It wasn't a triumph, it was just the beginning. "You will learn 3 things," he said. Breathing. Patience. And that a blow given in anger is a wasted blow. Kale trained in silence. At first, he resisted. Then he started listening. The ordeal. 6 months later, a tournament was announced. Kale, now more disciplined, signed up. Titan didn't stop him, but he didn't encourage him either. "You still fight for yourself," he said, on the eve of the competition. "One day, you will understand that true strength is not in winning, but in knowing why you are fighting." Kale didn't respond. Deep down, I knew Titan was right. The tournament was brutal. Kale charged forward, taking down opponents with a precision that surprised even himself. But in the final, he found a different opponent, a veteran named Rourke, a man who fought not with technique but with calculated cruelty. In the 3rd round, Rourke landed a low kick, breaking 2 of Kale's ribs. The referee hesitated, but did not disqualify the strike. Kale fell, the air leaving his lungs. Titan, in the audience, didn't move. I knew Kale needed to go through this. The gong sounded. Kale stood up, staggering. Rourke smiled, waiting for the knockout. But Kale didn't attack in anger. Breathed. Waited. And as Rourke lunged, Kale dodged, grabbed his arm, and threw him in one fluid motion, using his opponent's own strength against him. The audience exploded. Rourke fell, unconscious. Kale won. The legacy continues. That night, Titan found Kale in the dojo, alone. "You learned," he said. "It wasn't enough," Kale replied, touching his bandaged ribs. "I still fought for myself." Titan nodded. "One day, you will fight for something bigger." Kale looked at him, understanding. "And you?" Titan smiled, for the first time in years. "I've already fought. Now I teach." And so, the cycle closed. The giant that was once just brute strength now molded warriors who understood the true meaning of fighting. It wasn't about winning. It was about knowing why you stood up. The weight of victory. The days following the fight were strangely silent. Kale expected a reaction, a challenge, a threat, even a thank you for sparing Rourke from something worse. But nothing came. The city seemed to hold its breath, as if it knew something bigger was coming. He returned to the dojo before dawn, as usual. Titan was already there, sweeping the floor with slow, precise movements. He didn't look up when Kale entered. "You look different," said Titan, finally. Kale flexed his fingers, feeling the stiffness in his joints. "I won. But I don't feel victorious. Because you still don't know what you want." Kale laughed bitterly. "I wanted to prove that I could. That it wasn't just an angry boy. And he proved it." Titan leaned the broom against the wall. "But anger is not strength. It's just the beginning." Kale looked at his hands. They trembled, slightly. Not out of fear. Of something deeper. "What comes next?" Titan didn't respond right away. He went to the center of the dojo and knelt down, touching the mat with the palm of his hand. "When I was young, I fought for a king. A man who promised justice but ruled with blood. One day, I realized I was killing for him, not for me. So I stopped. And he broke me for it." Kale felt a chill. "Did you run away?" "No," Titan stood up. "I faced him. Not with a sword, but with empty hands. And he beat me. But it didn't kill me. Because, in the end, even a king needs someone who knows how to fight for something beyond himself." Kale understood. It wasn't about defeating Rourke. It was about what he would do with the victory. "What if I don't know?" Titan smiled grimly. "You will know. When the time comes. The shadow that doesn't leave." 3 nights later, Kale woke up to the sound of breaking glass. He jumped up, his hand already searching for the knife under the pillow. The window was open, the curtain flapping in the freezing wind. On the floor, a folded piece of paper, held by a stone. He unfolded it. "You wanna fight. But not the war." The signature was a symbol, a serpent coiled around a sword. Kale knew that emblem. He belonged to the Sons of the Blade, a sect of mercenaries that served the warlords of the North. They did not forgive betrayals. And Rourke, before he was a fighter, had been one of them. He burned the note in a candle flame, watching the ashes scatter. The call. The next morning, a messenger arrived at the dojo. It wasn't one of the usual ones, a tall, cold-eyed man dressed in a gray cloak that hid his hands. "Kale Vane," he said, emotionlessly. "You are summoned." Titan crossed his arms. "By whom?" The messenger didn't look away from Kale. "By the Lady of the Mist." A heavy silence fell over the dojo. The Lady of the Mist was a legend, a ruler who reigned over the lands beyond the mountains, where law was written in steel and mercy was a weakness. They said she collected warriors, not as slaves, but as pieces in a game that only she understood. Kale felt the weight of the choice. Refusal would be a death sentence. Accepting could be worse. "Why?" he asked, his voice firm. "Because you defeated one of ours," said the messenger. "And the lady doesn't like to lose." Titan took a step forward. "He's not yours. He belongs to no one." The messenger threw something at Kale's feet. An iron necklace, with the same symbol of the serpent and the sword. "But she wants it. And what the lady wants, she gets." Kale took the necklace. It was cold, heavy. "When?" "At dawn. A ship waits in the port." He looked at Titan. The old warrior said nothing. He just nodded once. The crossing. The ship was black, with sails torn by the wind. The crew didn't speak, moving like shadows. Kale was taken to a dark cabin, where a woman was waiting for him. Her back was turned, looking out the narrow window. Her dress was made of silver fabric, which shone even in the dim light. When he turned around, Kale saw that his face was young, but his eyes were ancient. "Kale Vane," she said, her voice as smooth as poison. "Finally." "Why me?" The Lady of the Mist smiled. Because you're the only one who can give me what I want. And what is it? She held out her hand. In his palm, there was a glass vial, filled with a dark liquid. The head of a king. Kale didn't move. Which king? Yours. He understood then. It wasn't a summons. It was a test. What if I refuse? The lady closed her fingers around the bottle. Then you will die. And I will find another. Kale looked out the window at the sea. He thought about Titan, the dojo, the weight of his empty hands. He thought of Rourke, lying on the floor, unconscious. He thought about all the struggles he still didn't understand. I need a sword, he said at last. The lady smiled. You already have one. The king and the warrior. The king's castle was a fortress of black stone, erected on a cliff. The waves crashed against the rocks below, as if trying to knock him over. Kale didn't enter through the main door. He climbed the outer wall, moving silently, as Titan had taught him. The guards didn't see him. Nobody saw him. Until he arrived at the king's chambers. The man sat in a high-backed chair, an iron crown on his head. He wasn't old, but his eyes carried the tiredness of someone who had seen too much. I was waiting for you, said the king. Kale didn't respond. He just drew the knife. Do you know why you are here? Asked the king. Because she ordered it. No, the king stood up. Because you chose it. Kale hesitated. She said you are not a king. He's a tyrant. The king laughed. And what do you think? Kale looked at the blade in his hand. He thought about all the fights, all the times he had raised his fists without knowing why. I don't think it matters, he said finally. Because I didn't come to kill you. The king raised an eyebrow. Then why did you come? Kale put away the knife. To ask, what would you do if I spared your life? The king studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled. I would fight by your side. The last lesson. Kale returned to the ship at dawn. The Lady of the Mist was waiting for him on deck, the vial still in her hands. Where is the head? She asked. There's no head, said Kale. Because there is no king. She didn't seem surprised. Then you failed. No, Kale took the iron collar off his neck and threw it into the sea. I chose. The lady watched him for a moment. Then he nodded. You are more dangerous than I thought. I'm not dangerous, Kale said. I'm free. She laughed, a light, almost musical sound. Freedom is an illusion, warrior. But if that's what you want to believe. She turned to leave, but stopped. Titan was right about you. Kale didn't ask how she knew. It didn't need to. What happens now? The lady looked at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to rise. Now, you go home. And wait. Wait for what? For the next fight. Kale took a deep breath. I knew she was right. There would always be another fight. There would always be something bigger. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid. Because now he knew why he got up.